Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome back to Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. As today, we delve into the steamy underbelly of Kiava Gamma. Who knows what horrors we might encounter down below? Well, I mean, we do have some vague idea from Alpha, but, you know, as always, things change. Honestly, given updates to the various other companion quests, I'm mostly curious to see how Heinrichs acts here. Oh, wow, yeah. And speaking of changes, that is also more horrifying than I recall from Alpha. Yeah, that's hard to look at. Scrolling lines of Technolingua that give you a headache. Oh, here we go. Numerous wires and pipes run to the filthy cages, which are filled with what looks like a conglomeration of human bodies. You cannot make out who is in the cage, but bright blue sparks flash intermittently in the darkness, while the mass of flesh twitches and shudders. Heinrichs casts a scrutinizing eye over one of the cages, before withdrawing his weapon and approaching to examine what lies inside. Careful, Heinrichs. Look at it. Heinrichs gestures towards the cage closest to you. Through the metal bars, you see it truly is a pile of human bodies, or something that used to be. The monstrously deformed bodies have fused together in places, while others were severed using saws and knives, leaving wounds seeping pus and slime, wounds that are agglutinating and sprouting tendons. Rods connected to the wires that run to a nearby cogitator bristle across the flesh. One of the human heads turns to you. Mercy! Even attempting to speak causes the mutant pain, but he bears the agony and forces out the words. Mercy. Make it stop. You examine the pulsating mass of flesh. The creature in the cage seems to be composed of several bodies joined together. You see no sutures or any other means by which the separate parts could have been connected. Among the layers of meat, you can discern large knots of muscles, various limbs, exposed bones, parts of faces, and entire heads. Only warp sorcery is capable of creating such an abomination, while preserving its ability to live on. What am I looking at? Heinrichs takes in his surroundings, and once again fixes his attention on the contents of the nearest cage. I'm beginning to have some idea. The Lex mechanic mentioned the inhabitants of the lower levels had been imprisoned in their homes. He said some of them were brought here. The cultists did something to these poor people, in their own home. And now, they are studying the result. Right, yeah. Lex, he did mention something about the slag waste disposal and chaos symbols on the machines. But how could that possibly result in something like this? To know the workings of dark sorcery means allowing corruption into oneself. Heinrich scowls. These are warp mutations, no doubt. Perhaps there was some side effect, and that is why they were brought here, to be connected to sensors and cogitators. Even fallen tech priests who have rejected the Omnissiah are driven by a perverted hunger for knowledge. So you think this was just an accident, but now they're studying the results? Heinrichs carefully studies the screens of the computing machines. Lingua Technis, corrupted by the scrap code, I'm sure. It's unlikely we will be able to extract anything of value from their data crypts. Thinking, Heinrichs clenches his fist and bites down on a knuckle. and then recoils when the mutant from the nearest cage reaches a hand out to him through the bars. "You..." A female face watches you from within the gloom of the cage. Even though half of her head has been turned into a mess of bones and lumpen growths, her single eye looks at you with a surprising amount of intelligence. "You promised! You promised us!" Her words are echoed by other voices in the depths of the cages. Heinrich leans toward the cage, but at sufficient distance to ensure that the mutant cannot reach him. "Who are you talking to? What did they promise you? Who are they?" You took us from the Inferno. You promised us a reward. Her face contorts in a grimace, and the creature's lips stick together like melted wax. I'll be damned. They can still speak. They remember the people who did this to them. Heinrich balls his fists in powerless rage. Then he frowns in thought. Perhaps a little biomancy will allow us to draw the fragments of knowledge out of them. Or it will trigger further changes. Adira curses furiously. A little biomancy? This is a tangle of flesh and bone that, by some freakish miracle, still happens to have a soul and a mind. Come on, Iceman. Let them die in peace already. Heinrich turns to Adira. You do not see his face, but you do see Adira suddenly shrink and cast her eyes down. Heinrich, what are you thinking? My psyker abilities allow me to affect the human body. It is one of the most effective tools to use against individuals who resist questioning. But if you're suggesting that I want to use it, I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself. The effect of warp energy will likely lead to an explosive reaction. I do not know the precise mechanism of this mutation. The result could be even more monstrous than its current state. Cool, great, yeah. Heinrich, I think you should let this one go. These poor people have suffered enough. And given what they've been through, I can't imagine you'd get anything even remotely useful. You'd just be tormenting them for no good reason. Heinrich nods. I am inclined to relieve their suffering. Every moment of existence in such a state is pure torture for the people locked in those sheaths. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I knew you'd come around. You know what we have to do. Let's put an end to this twisted experiment. At least we can deprive the cult of their research. Heinrich wavers for another moment, and then leans over the cogitators. Each mutant has cables attached. I may not know the nature of these machines, but it isn't too difficult to increase the voltage. Ah, this switch here. You hear the crackle of electricity. The wires glow with blue sparks, and the creatures locked in the cages drop lifelessly to the floor. The sharp tang of burned meat hangs in the air. That's that, then. But do you know what bothers me, rogue trader? The number of people here. There are too few. The lower levels of similar manufactorums are inhabited by millions. What happened to the rest of them? Heinrich shakes his head. I know I won't like the answer. Let's go. We still haven't done what we came here to do. I mean, Heinrichs, I feel like it's pretty obvious what's happened to them. We've all but been told and have seen the clear signs. They are being processed as a resource, used to create other abominations. I don't like that they keep recycling the same description.
Thousands and thousands of voices crying out for salvation, in hope, with wild promises. Their pain is your reward, Interrogator.
I will pretend I did not hear your last words, witch.
See, yeah, that's something else. That's another takeaway here. The other collective in the cage there also reacted to Heinrichs in much the same way, specifically singling him out as the one somehow responsible for all this. Given his ends justify the means kind of mindset, that immediately makes me assume that he allowed or fostered this situation, allowed it to progress as far as it has, in some misguided effort to learn more about the cult, or perhaps to lure out its leaders, or for some other similar end. The massive cogitator grows out of the metal bulkheads like a grotesque tumor. A hollow roar sounds from deep within the metal housing. Whatever spurred the computer into action, it has enough power to supply a small command center. As soon as your eyes fall upon the cogitator, you feel a tingling in your temples. Every nook, every component of the machine radiates a sense of wrongness. One that is difficult to explain, but no less palpable for that. It is as though the construct itself defies the laws of physics and perspective. Heinrichs makes a warning gesture, his voice swinging slightly with tension, is threaded with disquiet. Stop, Valen. That is a creation of the archenemy. Don't go near it. You have done enough for me and my mission. Don't put yourself at risk now. I mean, a bit late for that, but sure. As soon as Heinrichs takes another step toward the cogitator, it emits a deafening shriek, like hundreds of metal needles driving into toughened glass, as though sensing the stranger. Wincing, Heinrichs approaches the control panel and bends down toward the screen. Despite the heat clogging the room, you feel an ice-cold breeze. Heinrichs is clearly using his psyker abilities to try to fend off the pernicious effects of the Chaos artifact.
The Omnissiah's grace has not touched this object. This mechanism was not desecrated, but born, flawed and unnatural. Iron most profane.
Pascal unhurriedly produces a data slate.
Initiating observation log. Let not fear stand in the path of knowledge.
I mean, I feel like based on the things we've seen thus far, that might not be the best idea, but you do you. I mean, I guess we could get a slightly closer look. What's the worst that could happen? Heinrichs is too engrossed in his examination of the control panel to stop you. You draw closer to the side section of the cogitator housing, which has several thick cables running from it. With each step toward the flickering screens, you're feeling that the cogitator is watching you with rapidly blinking eyes, grows stronger and stronger. Up close, you see that besides buttons, switches, and toggles, the cogitator casing is also covered in strange writing. The cogitator displays a wall of text on its screens. The string of symbols is a senseless mixture of numbers, formulas, and unfamiliar characters. There seems to be no logic to it, and yet there is no doubt that the cogitator is computing calculations on a prodigious scale. Adira suddenly appears by your side and tugs at your sleeve. Lord Captain, no. Please, don't. Just don't look. The whispers say nothing good will come of it. You really should just step away from that thing. Oh, fine, you spoilsport. I won't read the crazy chaos writing. But, finding a way to disconnect it wouldn't be a bad idea. A bundle of cables is coming from the broken side panel of the Cogitator. They were clearly added after the machine came off the manufacturer's production line. The wire snakes along the floor and disappears inside a maintenance hatch that leads to somewhere below. You take a step backward, and suddenly one of the Cogitator screens changes color, becoming a bright yellow. Your eyes are helplessly drawn to the bilious hue. You turn sharply away from the screen, and you can almost feel invisible shackles falling away. The realization comes a moment later. You are not fighting against your own curiosity, but against someone's malevolent will, which has now lost its hold on you. Okay, yep, I feel like we've indulged our curiosity enough for one day. Heinrichs, you just about ready to destroy this thing? Out of the question. Even if we disregard the potential loss of data, it could kill us. Yeah, well, if we don't destroy it, it might also kill us. But fine. Finish whatever you're trying to do, quick. We really shouldn't linger. A minute passes, then another. You watch Heinrichs examine the Cogitator. His eyes scan the screens, his hands darting from the reel to the lever, sometimes hovering uncertainly over the next switch, which immediately receives a coating of frost. At some point, you hear his voice, almost a whisper, barely audible above the clanging, roaring machine. Sacrifices. More and more sacrifices every minute. Heinrichs looks at you, his eyes darker now, appearing almost black in his white face. Hecatome determinans. The womb of this cursed machine is down in the lower levels. The auxiliary enumerator controls the system for delivering molten waste under the manufacturer's main building. This Cogitator is fueled by the energy harnessed from thousands of people who are flowing beneath our feet as slag waste as we speak. But I cannot even imagine the reason for sacrificing all these people. It's inconceivable. Now we know why the Fabricator Censor prized this monster so highly. The cursed tech priest and his associates created something that went beyond the limits of the Omnissiah's power. This machine is designed to process myriad possibilities using warp sorcery. It has almost finished its task. It predicts the future, Valen. Predicts the future? What, like Adira? Do not attempt to gain any insight into the essence of the machines corrupted by the archenemy. At least, not if you value your soul. I have encountered the heretics' mechanical abominations before. To truly fathom their nature is to allow a particle of death into your heart. Heinrichs is silent for a few moments. But the fruit they bear. No matter how aberrant their instruments, the fruit they bear could be useful. Heinrichs, buddy, I have concerns. Adira opens her mouth to speak, but then drops her gaze awkwardly. You intend to let a creation from beyond the veil do what it was designed to do? Juliet stares at Heinrichs in astonishment. Is it not your calling to protect your kind from the schemes and temptations of Silent Thresh? You cannot understand this, Xenos. Knowing one's enemy is the path toward destroying them. if, in order to prevent countless future calamities, I must perpetrate one of my own. Such is my duty to the Golden Throne. Juliet remained silent for a while, her head tilted to one side. Not only do you not keep watch over your kin, you even sacrifice your own souls to your dead god. It is astounding. Heinrich's clouded gaze suddenly clears, and he glares at the Cogitator. No, the cult's filthy ravings are not worth it. What we can extract from its storage drives will be enough. Hey, Heinrichs, buddy, that was a quick turnaround. Yeah, so they definitely did add some new stuff here since Alpha. Made him a bit more reactive to our previous decisions, which I do appreciate. And that also strongly implies that we can further influence his growth over time. That is a very pleasant surprise. You're making the right call, Heinrichs. We need to shut this thing down. It might be too late to rescue the people down below, but we have to at least try. Heinrichs vacillates for another second, then shakes his head as though clearing away mental fog. I almost succumbed to the archenemy's old trick. The lure of the unattainable. The primary of all the traps that chaos sets for unwary souls. Heinrich's movements are exact and purposeful, unlike his earlier operation of the Cogitator. One after another, the Cogitator screens begin to fade to black, and the roar coming from inside the machine quietens to a barely perceptible howl, in which you imagine you hear notes of dejection. Heinrichs bends over the keys and flinches as if from an electric shock. His head snaps back unnaturally, and you see his lips moving. The Cogitator lets out a roar that grows louder by the second.
I will exterminate every last one of you.
Oh no, not a single screamer of Tsiench. What will we do? Gotta say though, for something apparently so central to Cubist Delphine's plans, you'd really think he would have a higher volume of defenses. But, you know, mute point. We're silencing the threat either way. There we go. That should more or less make up for the lack of puns in the first half of the episode. When things really get that grimdark, you know, it's hard to sneak a joke in edgewise without it just kind of completely ruining the mood. Also, I was trying not to vomit because those things are super gross. The unholy masses. The collective survivors. The fused and refused. The conjoint committee. Okay, now I'm done. Let's take this thing out. Slight misplacement on our dodge zone there, but no big deal. Heinrichs will be locking it down. Speaking of which, let's get him set.
Anything else? But of course.
I mean, really, I suppose there's no reason to overthink this. This guy's pretty hopelessly outclassed. But, you know, I also need to get used to the current squad dynamic. We do have at least 2 more fights ahead of us with Heinrichs in tow.
Let's see to it.
Alright, and just to be sure... Oh, shoot. Well, guess I spoke too soon. He has definitely meant to raise the stakes. Alright, so Screamer, still our central target, but now we also have 3 pink horrors and what looks to be a Herald of Tzeentch tucked all the way in back. Again, still familiar threats, so not hugely concerned, but it does complicate things a bit.
On it.
Yeah. Need to get used to Valen's new loadout, too. Yeah, Herald. Oof, okay. So the Herald's not much of a threat. It's really the pink horrors we have to worry about. Those AoE attacks are rough. They'll pose much less threat once we blew them away.
If I must.
Though, of course, Screamer's still an issue. Gotta take that guy down, too. Alright, that's enough of that. Over here, you magenta malcontent! That should hopefully peel them off our support squad. Toss out some healing while we're at it. I think they actually upgraded the low-tier heal power. I've noticed it started healing flesh wounds, even if you don't top off health. Which is certainly a welcome change. It does make it more viable. And shot him down. Oh, so close. But easy enough to finish. Let's lock these guys down.
I am a navigator, not a servitor.
Oh, nice.
Be careful not to cross my gaze.
Man, Heinrichs is definitely in his element here. Gotta say, he has ever so slightly impressed me. Both in and out of combat.
The best defense is a good offense. I'll see to it personally. He never stood a chance.
Screamer out. Pull. Nice. He split his aura in twain. Oh, there we go. Pask struggling a bit on accuracy. A problem which Heinrich certainly does not seem to share.
I'll make it happen. Who if not me?
Away with ye, abomination! Back to the primary pits which spawned ye!
It's as good as done.
Oh, wow. Alright, he missed that one. Still, though. Yeah, I think it is fair to say that, while not quite as tanky as Abby, Heinrichs definitely has him on offense. Though I suppose the doubled up buffs certainly don't hurt. Alright, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I feel like we've gotten past that very brief period of peril. There were a few scant seconds there where we were, in fact, in some real danger. But I think we're well past that point, ever since we dropped the Screamer. Assuming, of course, that Adira doesn't compound our problems, I suppose we should go light with her powers for the rest of this fight. No need to tempt fate. The Veil's actually looking a mite bit thin there.
Naturally. For the throne's glory.
Come on, pass. You're embarrassing me. And we're good. Heinrich stares at the smoldering ashes of the daemon, and then at the destroyed cogitator. The furrow on his brow slowly smooths out. His face looks almost contented. The creation of chaos is no more. I hope the fabricator censor did not have time to pass on the secrets of this creature to his associates. And I hope that the survivors down on the lower levels can hold on until we liberate Kiava Gamma. Juliet looks at Heinrichs. There is more wisdom in you than I thought at first. One must never touch that which was created by... I can do without the Xenos moralizing. Know your place. Juliet's momentarily unfurrowed brow quickly tenses again. I never forgot it, Monkey. Oh, Heinrichs, stepping forward with one foot and backward with the other. Alright, well. Something happened to you when you were shutting this thing down. What was that? Heinrichs jerks his head and waves away the question, his movements sharp and unnatural. We'll talk about it later, but right now... Heinrichs' eyes settle on you. I must thank you, Valen. Without your help and cooperation, I doubt I would have reached the depths of Kiava Gamma and learned the truth behind my agent's dispatches and reports. I would never have ended up here, and I would never have succeeded in hampering the cult's activities. My business on Kiava Gamma is concluded. It is time to return to the mission that brought you to the industrial world. The only thing I'll ask of you is an audience when we return to the ship. Heinrichs bows his head to signal that the conversation is over. Really? No vested interest in seeing the fall of Cubus Delphine? I mean, we're going to take you there anyway. I'm not going back to the ship now. But it does seem peculiar that you were content with just smashing up his cogitator, and not the guy who actually built it. Though I suppose that does add some weight to the speculation that Heinrichs deliberately allowed this to happen just so he could access this particular machine, and now that it's destroyed, he really does have no reason to be here. I don't know, it just feels a bit strange, you know? The folks in the cages seeming to recognize him, Adira making much the same observation, with her powers, despite his attempts to repeatedly silence her. Though really, I think the thing that's got my attention the most with this revised event, since they definitely tweaked a few things since Alpha, is his comment about how if he could potentially stop countless future atrocities at the cost of just committing one now, then it was his duty to the Golden Throne to do so. That really does smack of the sort of justification, the ends justify the means sort of argument you might expect from a zealot teetering on the edge of oblivion, ready to take that one last step that he can't come back from, only for us to ultimately talk him down from the edge with our own outside, perhaps ever so slightly more pragmatic observations. Of course, there's also every chance in the world I'm simply overthinking it. But I do think it makes for good food for thought. And I will admit, again, Heinrich's definitely more interesting than I initially thought. Though I always kind of liked him, it's just in this particular case, because of the whims of the Raiders, we were never going to be traveling with him long term. Though I may actually end up running a new poll in the near future. now that we've got those companion DLC finally dropping, to see if it's about time we shake things up. Perhaps revise our squad loadout going into Act 3. But, you know, we'll see. I do kind of like everyone we've already gotten used to traveling with, too. It's hard to really imagine cutting any of them loose. Anyway, this feels like a good place to call it. We'll hit the pause button for now. We'll take care of the usual off-screen bookkeeping. And we'll pick up here next time. See you then. Oh, and special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to Eerie V23, Revenant, Alois, Dragon Matrix 7, Drakiith, EgonAlter, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Kazorm, Mark Giemza, Nathan Welch Jr., OverlordPherom, RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Tomasz Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, if you'd also like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things. Trust me, it does make a difference. Or you could even check out the PayPal, the Patreon, the Nexus GG, or the YouTube memberships. Links are in the description.
I will pretend I did not hear your last words, witch.